Good morning, church family. My name is Niels, and it's so great to be with you all this morning. Thank you for joining me in my home today as I get to share with you a little bit. Thank you for coming all the way to the west part of Winnipeg, and we just welcome you here through the means of Facebook and social media. This is just so fantastic. I'm gonna share a story. So the other day I was looking at a football and I kept looking at it and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it hit me. But and now I have a concussion. I'm kidding. No, I do have a concussion. But that was just a joke, right? Because that's just who I am. That's just me being me. And so we're in a series called Salt and Light, and I'm going to share with you how I am acting as salt and light, and just how I've been able to impact others while also others having an impact on me in areas in and around my life. I want to subtitle it. I want to say that today I'm going to talk about interruption versus disruption, and the story of my concussion will segue into that. Before I get into that, just as you can see here in our home, as I said, I am healing and getting better from my concussion. I've got a bit of a dark vibe going on where I'm not really looking at a screen, and so everything is dark, and so I'm not going for the underground church vibe. Although, thankfully we do have the freedom to be able to meet online, and that's something I'm thankful to God for. And for today's Bible verse, what I sensed like in this season of what God is doing, a couple months ago I was reading in the book of Acts, and I was reading in Acts chapter 8 and verse 4, where it says, but the believers who were scattered preached the good news about Jesus wherever they went. And so what was happening here, if you read in Acts chapter 7, you'll see that right before that Stephen, there's the story of Stephen being stoned. And then right after he was stoned, persecution, a great wave of persecution began to hit. And then Saul was leading this, well before he became Paul. But Saul was essentially persecuting Christians. And then we see here, and I'll read the verse again. But the believers who were scattered preached the good news about Jesus wherever they went. And I think that verse is just so applicable in the times that we're in today, just with COVID and the coronavirus, and just not being able to physically meet or gather. And even in some countries right now, it's even illegal to even meet online. Thankfully in Canada we don't have that as a pressure against us. We're just not able to physically gather. In Manitoba, gathering sizes are increasing, which is just so fantastic. But I think it's just great that we have this freedom right now, that even though we are scattered, dispersed in our homes, through the amazing airwaves of the internet, we can still minister to one another. And I'd said earlier that I'm kind of subtitling this interruption versus disruption. I'm going to talk about something that has interrupted my life, and then I'm going to talk about something that has completely disrupted my life. So as I mentioned, I have a concussion, and this happened about just over 4 weeks ago. I caught a viral cold, which thankfully was not COVID, and then as a result of that, 2 to 3 days later, I just so happened to be dehydrated, not at all from not drinking fluids, but I was just dehydrated, and I went to the washroom in the middle of the night, and then I unfortunately fell over. I hit the back of my head on the sink, I think, and then on the floor, from what my wife heard in the ensuite. So I was out of it for a few seconds, and then she came and helped me up. So that was a bit scary. And then later that morning or afternoon, I went to the ER, and then they put 2 bags of IV fluids in me, and then I walked home like it was no big deal from the Grace Hospital, because we live not too far away from it. And then 2 days later, when I went on the computer to do some work from home, I suddenly had nausea, feelings of nausea, feelings of ringing in the ears, which still continues to be persistent, headaches, and it just kind of felt like the world was spinning a bit, and everything was just going crazy. And this was just after being on a computer for 10 minutes. So I then went back to the ER with my wife, and then that was when I found out that I was diagnosed with, or that was when I was diagnosed essentially with a concussion. And so I think that in this season, I recognize that this concussion is not like a permanent thing. I pray and hope and that, you know, things are going to get better. Things are slowly improving. I've got a bit of like some headaches and some ringing in the ears, tinnitus feelings, often like that. But I sense that there is improvement. You know, sometimes I find myself back in this space again because, like, you know, a few days ago, it was great. We were starting to reintroduce some light. I was giving my brain some cognitive rest, and, you know, just now things have just I wouldn't say like gotten worse, but I just had a bit of a setback where more headaches and ringing in the ears became more pronounced, and so I just had to slow it down. So this has very much been an interruption in my life, but I do think that, you know, God is ministering to me and is speaking to me during intimate times. I'll go on further to say that you know, with social media, right? Like I personally love it. I think, like, you know, many of us, and myself included, will have a tendency with social media to post some of like the great things in our life. And I just challenged myself to post on social media about my concussion. And it was a bit of a step in the sense that, like, I didn't necessarily want to post for the sake of getting attention, but I just felt like God was saying, like, you know what, like, you know, we tend to post a lot of the good in our life, right? Because social media can be confusing when we see that, you know, we're posting like our highlight reels, right? But do we really post like who we are? And I just wanted to post a vulnerable post, you know, I mean, and so I did. I posted like a black and white photo on this couch of me and my wife kind of in on it in photo. And I just kind of described what happened and then asked for people to pray. And it was so encouraging because through technology, right, essentially the comments were just filled with lots of love and encouragement. And I think I just needed that because, you know, I'm not able to meet with people. We're not entirely able to gather. I wasn't able to go anywhere. I got some texts and messages. And so the love that poured in from people both on Instagram and Facebook, and people like dropping prayers, was just so needed for myself during that time. And then it's in moments like that where I'm thankful, you know, for social media. We recognize that, you know, there's so many dangers with social media because it can cause us to be full of ourselves or to wish we had the life that was being portrayed of the person that we see, right? Because, you know, if you have the tendency to portray your life perfectly, well, you know, what is it like when you're off camera type thing, right? And so I kind of took that step of just posting like a raw post saying, hey, like, this is what's going on. I'd love some love and some prayers. And there were some like prophetic words in there, things like that I just like needed to hear. And I was just so encouraged by that component of being ministered to online. And so I recognize that this concussion is just an interruption, that I will get better, but I am thankful for it in the sense that, well, I mean, I wish I didn't hit my head, but I should say that I'm thankful for the good that has come out of it, because the comments that people left for me during that time, like, I really needed that encouragement and the text messages. And so I'm thankful for that. Now, for something that has disrupted my life, some of you may know I have celiac disease, right? And so that means that I can't eat gluten-free food. And that if I eat gluten, that, you know, could cause like an upset stomach, among other things. It's an autoimmune disease. So having celiac disease is not only just an interruption, it is more than that. It is a disruption. That means that I needed to make, and my wife and I, like, life-altering changes in the sense of like getting a new toaster, so that way there wasn't like we weren't contaminating like normal bread with like gluten-free type bread, you know, taking the appropriate precautions. My wife makes really good gluten-free food, you know, so there was just so many different changes that had to be made that essentially disrupted my life. but it was a necessary disruption so that I can continue to eat healthy. And so when I think of like the example of interruption versus disruption, I think of like how online ministry, just as a result of COVID, has pretty much just not just interrupted the church, it has disrupted the church in a good way. Because the reality is that if you weren't online before, or if you weren't into it as much, well, now we're all into it together, you know, whether we like it or not. And I believe that God is working in and through online ministry. I'll give you another example of how God is working through online ministry. So I've popped into the Wednesday night prayer that the church does, and I think it was on my social media post when I talked about my concussion. It was Violet Rademacher, so thank you for that, Violet, who commented, you know, would you like for us to pray for you tonight? Well, the cool thing is that I logged into the prayer on Zoom. It was kind of amazing in the sense I didn't have to drive anywhere to go for prayer. I didn't have to arrange a ride. I didn't have to be brought back home. Sure, there wasn't the personal factor of people laying hands on me, but I basically joined in to a Zoom call and I got ministered to. And I remember like Rick praying for me, Tanya praying for me, Dale, Violet, you know, a couple weeks ago, and I forget who was on that call, but I was ministered through via Zoom, and I needed that during that time. I needed to be ministered to. So again, this is just a fantastic example about how something that has disrupted the church through online ministry that is having a personal impact on me. Another thing too is like home group ministry. So when we went into a pandemic, you know, I go to the Anslus home group. Gotta love them Shawali Boppers. Sherry and Paul, what's up? I love you guys. And so we were meeting on Facebook Messenger, and you know, essentially there was like a group chat of us, and then right after Wednesday night prayer, somebody would hit ring, and then next thing you know, like we'd be on our phones or on our iPads, and we'd see like everyone. It'd be like Zoom, but it'd be on Facebook Messenger, and we'd be checking in with each other like every week or every other week and being like, hey, what's up? How's everyone doing? How's everyone doing spiritually? You know, what can we pray for you for? I mean, it was amazing. Like online ministry was really having an impact on myself. I believe it was having a missional impact on the group, right? Because when we think about like that verse in Acts, right? Because again, I'll come back to it, but the believers who were scattered, right? Because we were scattered, right? Preached the good news about Jesus wherever they went. And so we were able to be that good news and live it out and minister to one another wherever we went, and where we were in this case was in our homes online. And so I was able to be ministered to, right? I mean, granted, before the pandemic we would go over to their homes and meet, but the reality is we're scattered, and this is just where we find ourselves in right now, and we were able to meet online. And so I believe that this is the impact that online ministry right now through our church is having on myself. I'm very, very grateful for it. And I'll share with you some more on how it's having like a missional impact in our world. For those of you who may have the YouVersion Bible app, you know, if you don't have it, it's a great app. There's lots of Bible plans and devotions on it. I mean, at the start of the pandemic, it had so many downloads. I should have got the numbers for it, but like, you know, if you want, you can look it up. It had like so many downloads, and so many people were checking out Psalm 91, and so many plans were downloaded. So a lot of people were asking deep questions about faith and God, and they turned to the YouVersion Bible app for answers. They turned to the Bible, right? For those that didn't have a Bible, they were able to download it for free on their phones. Here's another thing that has had a missional impact through online ministry is, I'm sure many of you have heard this song, but if you haven't, I encourage you to look up this song called The Blessing. It is such a beautiful song, and it says to me, the Lord bless you and keep you. May his favor be upon you. May his light shine upon you, along those lines. But if you hear it in the form of a song and I'll sing it for you. No, I'm kidding. I don't sing. My wife does. She's the worship leader. I let her do it. Sometimes she sings it. It's so beautiful. But you should listen to it. It is a fantastic song. And what's amazing is that like music through online ministry has had such a missional impact for so many people, because I grew up as a music influenced person, in the sense of like I grew up, I would say like in high school, you know how you can choose something to major in? Well, my thing was kind of music, right? So I grew up playing like the bass guitar at church, played trumpet and piano lessons. So I was well-rounded in music in growing up as a kid and into high school. But I had this like thought that, you know, like including myself, like, you know, the music students were always like kind of weird, right? And then you'd see the students playing like sports, and I'm like, oh man, like the sports guys, like the ones on like the football team and the basketball team, like those were cool. Well, here's what's amazing, or here's what's crazy. We're in the middle of a pandemic right now. Sports is canceled. There's no NBA, which actually just means the Raptors get to be the champions for 2 years in a row, because, you know, they won in 2019, so now they get to hold it for another year. There's no hockey, there's no baseball. I mean, I get it, things are restarting. And now music is blessing the world in such a profound way. What was before weird is now blessing us through our devices and through our screens. And so I'll come back to the song, The Blessing. I mean, go look this up. Type in like The Blessing and type in a country of your choice. Like type in The Blessing like Canada, type in The Blessing USA, type in The Blessing South Africa, type in The Blessing Sri Lanka. That's my background heritage. And you will find various different versions of it, of people like recording themselves singing it over Zoom or whatever, and then they'll put it and stitch it into like this amazing video. There's like The Blessing the World. So they've stitched it with so many different people singing this worship song. And it's crazy. It's this worship song that came out, or it's this song, sorry, that was sang in a worship set that has blessed the church and now blessed the world in such a profound way. And it was released like right at the start of the pandemic, right? And so it came at such a profound time, right, in which we really, really needed that song. And so through online ministry, it has unified churches in such a profound way. And I believe that this song in itself has unified nations as well, by so many different countries across the world singing it, whether in English or in their own language. What was amazing is that the church that released this song, which is Elevation Church out of North Carolina, when they sang it with Carrie Job and Cody Carnes, they now released a gospel revamp. And when a church does like the best cover of their own song, I mean, that is amazing. So I encourage you to look that up and be blessed by it. Another incredible thing about online ministry is that the church that I was a part of before moving to Winnipeg, I was a part of the Yellowknife Vineyard Church for 3 years, and I was pastoring there. And, you know, and they've been, and I pastored there for about 1.5 years, and they've been doing kind of the same thing we were doing, meeting through online church, just like we are. And something that they're going to try and do to facilitate more community is they're going to try doing different house groups on a Sunday. So it would be like, you know, you gather at someone's house, and then you would essentially watch the live service as you are right now. And then after that, you can then have some community and fellowship and then discuss the message. So a church of like 120 plus or so might have, you know, 12 different houses gathering. I know right now, because I'm really good friends with their pastor, you know, there's about 3 or 4 of them trying out. And the really amazing thing about this is that it essentially encourages them to live out day to day what is being taught essentially on the other side of the screens. And so all that to say is that, you know, we're in a time in which the church is online. There's great potential for it, but I get it. We long for community. We were made for community. We were made to be together, to be with one another, right? And even though we are scattered, we can still preach the good news about Jesus wherever we go, just like they did in Acts chapter 8, verse 4. As salt, you know, as we're in this series called Salt and Light, as salt, we are called as Christians to essentially counteract the power of sin in our lives. And as light, we are to be an ongoing witness to a reality of Christ's presence in our lives. I'll say that one more time. As salt, we are called as Christians to counteract the power of sin in our lives. And as light, we are to be an ongoing witness to a reality of Christ's presence in our lives. And so I would encourage you as you reflect to maybe ask God, how can I be that salt and light in and around my life? And as well, maybe there's some things that God is interrupting and disrupting in your life. Interrupting as in maybe for the short term, that maybe God is going to change the trajectory for the long term. And maybe there's some things that God needs to disrupt in your life. And so I don't know what that looks like for you. I mean, for me, this interruption, of the concussion, God is speaking to me deeply. And it's amazing that even though I'm in this dark place, because I need cognitive rest, that God is working and speaking to me, whether it's through audiobooks or podcasts, or through listening to the Bible, that even in this interruption, God is speaking to me. And I think for some of you, you might need to look at what is God disrupting in your life, maybe even for the long term. And so I just encourage you just to reflect on that. God bless you.